It is a special edition of The Marketplace with me, Charles Aite. This hour, we're going to be having an extensive discussion with students at the various universities in Ghana on a topical matter that is so much of importance to Ghana's business community. We're talking about Ghana's debt crisis. And of course, joining us in studio are Daniel Obin Asamoah of the University of Ghana. He's the SLC Treasurer, as well as Ebenezer Yeboah, President of the Business School at the University of Ghana, all from the university, as well as students from the University of Professional Studies, UPSA, Valley University, and Cape Coast University, who will be debating virtually on this particular program. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. I see you're all upbeat about today's discussion. Yes. But you know, we keep hearing about the debt crisis, the need for government to go to the IMF, and the impact it's having on the business community. But let's put it into context and, you know, put on the screen, you know, for you to appreciate the debt crisis that, you know, we currently have as a country. And of course, it's risen by close to 182% since 2016. You are students in the field of business and finance. So when you're seeing these figures, how do you respond to that? What are we getting wrong when it comes to the management of our economy? I want to start off with you.
Well, Ghana's debt crisis, first and foremost, I would want to say a very good afternoon to our cherished viewers, especially those from the University of Ghana community.
Yeah, I guess they're watching.
Exactly. So with the Ghana's debt crisis, it's really appalling. It's really appalling.
Appalling?
Very appalling. In fact, looking at an economy like this with so much resources and still in debt, then it's very appalling, because recently we were rated as a B country with the credit worthiness, meaning that we don't even deserve any loan or any let me say any loan anymore, because we have been in a debt situation which is really appalling, and it is not right at all. And that's my take on it.
It's interesting you keep mentioning the word appalling. Do you agree with him when he says our debt crisis is appalling? Because I don't think a debt, debt levels are much more of a concern globally. The United States owes, France owes, Germany owes, Britain owes. But the question is, what are we using the debt for?
Yeah. So thank you very much, and nice to have me here.
Great.
So on the debt issue in Ghana is not the best of indicators. Looking at the indications and all, it's not the best of figures. But then the issue is no country can run without debts. Debts are critical in the nation's GDP and everything and what have you. So the main problem is what the debts are being used for, and how we are even servicing those debts. Looking at the debt component of our GDP, as of now, it's somewhere about 80%. Well, government...
It's nearing 80%, actually.
It's nearing 80%, Thank you. So, government has used these debts for quite a good number of initiatives and projects. For that, we cannot argue. But then, there are also issues that need to be tackled. And those issues are the issues we are talking about.
Treasurer of the University
I'm the
of Ghana.
treasurer.
Yeah, so you manage the treasury of the University of Ghana. Let's see, you are the finance minister. What do you think you could have done better with the finances of Ghana's macroeconomic, stronghold, if you were in the place of the finance minister, to mitigate the concerns around debt?
So looking at the debt, I think if we are to look clearly at production and also adding value to our primary product, Ghana is a primary exporter. We export mainly primary products without adding not much value to our primary products. So if we are to add value to our primary products before exporting them, I believe it would even increase our debt to our exports ratio. And that would also increase our revenue on the side of exports. So increasing the revenue on the side of exports, I believe would some way, somehow offset the deficit in our budget, and also we usually finance those deficits with debt. So if we are trying to raise the revenue and also maintain normal expenditure levels, I believe at a point we can try and bridge and also reduce the level of debts which come with huge interest and also conditionalities which are harsh to meet.
Indeed, when it comes to the IMF and all. So you are much more considerate about exporting and gaining revenue out of exports. And that's an impressive argument. But Ebenezer, you hear analysts say that, the debt, as you rightly stated, the debt keeps, rising. We are exposed when it comes to the sustainability of our debt. And yet still they're concerned about the expenditure in the country. How do we balance debt and expenditure to ensure we're on the right path?
With debt and expenditure. Well, most of our activities are being financed with debt, and that's very fine. You know, we are not concerned about just going for the loans facilities. No, that's not the only issue. How these loans are being used. You know, accountability is the most important factor here. So if you go for that and you don't account to the people, because recently by the Ghana Audit Service, they claim about 12 billion Ghana cedis is not being accounted for in recent times. Where is this money? You go for debt, you go for loans, it becomes debt, and we are not able to account for this. Fine, you can allocate some of the monies to these ministries and this thing. Let them account for them. All right, and that's the most important thing here. If you account for it, we have no issues, or Ghanaians won't be even complaining about, I think, these E-Levies, which I believe you may be asking us questions about it. Exactly. Because the accountability is the factor here. And if that is done, I believe everything will be fine with the Ghanaians.
Great. So you are more concerned about the accountability within the spending structure of government. Of course, these are students of the University of Ghana helping us understand their own thoughts when it comes to Ghana's debt crisis and how best we can deal with it. We also have the Valley View University colleagues, your colleagues from the Valley View University, who are going to be joining us via Zoom, together with others as well from the UPSA. I think they are all on the screens now. Welcome, gentlemen. And of course, joining us from the Valley View University are Bismarck Owusu-Setre Edu, together with his colleagues. But Bismarck, you've been listening into the discussion. Welcome to the program. Daniel and Ebenezer have made very great contributions regarding the debt, sustainability, issues of accountability, and the need for government to be really export-driven and not really import-led. Where do you stand when it comes to how we can deal with Ghana's debt crisis from the perspective of a student?
All right, thank you very much, and good afternoon to our cherished audience. First of all, I would want to pick it from this side. We know that government, trying to reduce our debt, has issued some bonds, which, as we speak now, from the ratings that we have received, we've been told that they are not doing very well. I think that, first of all, what the government should be doing is to do what we call interest rate manipulations. Government should try to reduce interest rates so that individuals and businesses can borrow and invest so that they can create more jobs, and by so doing, people will have something to do, and that can also go in a long way to reduce our debt.
But I want to hold you on to that particular thought, because we have seen governments through the Monetary Policy Committee try endlessly to reduce the rate of lending. The policy rate keeps reducing, if not maintained, at various basis points. But the question now is, how banks are receiving most of these interventions. So Maurice Anyamenta, also a PhD candidate from the business school, the School of Business at the Valley View University. What models are you really calculating when it comes to the interventions that government must inject in bringing the debt down?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to your viewers and listeners. I think that when we come to the debt crisis, one of the interventions we can put in place has to do with the medium-term fiscal consolidated strategy or plan. When I talk about government embarking on medium-term fiscal consolidated strategy, it has to do with a reduction in expenditure. And I think that just recently, the finance minister said there is a policy decision to reduce expenditure by 20%. I think that this thing should have been done long time. And it's one of the strategies that government is using in order to, as it were, manage the debt crisis. But my argument is that if we can be able to reduce this expenditure now, why not, previously, in order to have managed this debt crisis? So I think that this is the intervention when we put in place, we can be able to manage the debt crisis.
Indeed. And of course, even as you make this submission, we have been interacting with so many economists, financial analysts who make the case that Ghana's challenge is not with revenue, but rather, expenditure, as my colleagues in the studio have rightly put it. So I want to just come back to you friends from the University of Ghana. They have cited various models that government can work with. interest rate coming down, expenditure being cut at a cap. But practically, once again, Treasurer from the University of Ghana, if you're looking at the numbers, how sustainable do you think that, reduced interest rates could go in ensuring that Ghana's debt crisis is much more on the low side? Because as they're saying from the UPSA value view, if interest rates come down, the cost of doing business subsequently is going to reduce, and businesses can now get back about their issues and increase profits, employ more people, and reduce the cost of living. How do you relate to that from your perspective as a student from the University of Ghana?
Yeah, thank you. So to an extent, I'll side with them, because if interest rates reduce, cost of doing business would go down, more people would be employed. And more people being employed, or having more people on the employment scale, would mean higher production. And higher production would also mean, more likely to mean higher revenue. And when we get higher revenue, definitely domestically, we can't be sustaining ourselves to an extent. So when we're able to sustain ourselves with our domestic revenue, and also revenue from doing business and all, I believe at the end of the day, the debt gap can also be bridged. Yeah.
Interesting. But it also begs the question: when it comes to managing the debt crisis, is it exclusively the duty of government or also the private sector?
All right, I think it is both government and the private sector. All right, we all have a part to play in this. In fact, every individual citizen has a part to play, because these servicing our debt. In fact, it has happened, so we have to find solutions to it. Servicing our debt, we have to ensure we pay our taxes. All right. Because I believe in the last years, by about 36 billion Ghana cedis was used in servicing the debt, the interest of our debt, exactly. Just the interest, not even the principal. And if being a citizen of this country and I pay my taxes, well, I do everything just like a good citizen would do, I believe the government will be able to accumulate some monies that will be used to service these debts.
So you feel we're not paying our taxes enough?
Not enough.
Really? And we're not paying enough.
I believe,
gentlemen on Zoom, of course, we're having someone here tell us that we're not paying our taxes enough to cover up with the debts. How many of you agree? Could show by hand. How many of you agree to the fact that we're not taxing enough to deal with the debt crisis?
Let me say, people are swaying from their taxes. They are not paying their taxes, all right? People are running from paying taxes. That is what should be that. And so people are running from paying taxes, and that's the problem we are facing.
People are running from paying taxes.
Exactly.
Treasurer, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree with that. If you look at our tax nets, it's not too broad. And when you are not getting a broader tax net, meaning you are getting lower revenues. And when you are getting lower revenues, clearly you need more revenue to finance your deficits. And
but also government has introduced a COVID levy. We have the NHI levy. We have VAT. We have excise stamps, sanitation levies. You go into the mall, you have to buy something, you pay taxes. So when it comes to broadening the tax net, how broader should broaden?
With the formal sector and also with the informal. The informal sector is about 80% of our whole employment structure. And if you look at the informal sector, most of them evade taxes. They are not paying the actual taxes they should pay. And in that case, it's what amounts to evasion.
I guess your colleagues on Zoom are listening keenly. Yeah. This is the University of Ghana's viewpoint. And, Valley View University, if you're listening in, or UPSA, if you're listening in, do you really agree to the fact that broadening the tax nets could go a long way in dealing with Ghana's debt crisis, and that so many people are evading taxes as you speak?
I would like to add a question that has to do with broadening the tax. Because as of now, almost 70% of our revenue collection is from internal taxes, taxing of businesses, taxing of properties, and also sales and product taxes. So if you were saying broadening the tax nets, people are avoiding taxes, they are direct and indirect taxes. And those taxes in that nature are on goods and services. Everybody buys goods. For instance, we know the taxes on fuel, which basically have come in different dimensions. Every fuel price has components of taxes. So everybody pays taxes. But if you are to break it down to cover the informal sector, that means that we, in a way, need data to restructure the informal sector. Because in countries, if their sectors are structured, it is easy to tax them. Right now, we don't have data to that effect. Data should be the basis for every decision. We can't just say, let's tax them. Tax who? How are they categorized? Where are they located? Which industry? What are the components? So if we first need to tax them, we need to understand how much is the tax component and how impactful or how damaging will it be if we tax them more than what they make? Because there are industries that are currently overtaxed, which is affecting productivity and revenue from that angle. The more you tax, the easier you kill those industries. So let's be careful on how we speak about taxing SMEs and all those stuff, but we should know how long tax rebates will help them grow, which consequently will help them become formidable going forward for the sake of revenue collection going forward.
I mean, you guys just sound typically like, the average economist out there, but we do get it. I mean, you guys have been reading, books and textbooks when it comes to economic and finance and whatnot. But let's practicalize it a bit. University of Ghana, you have rightly pointed out the tax issues, but help us practicalize this. You are owing so much. Ratings agencies are raising concerns. You are the finance minister. You're listening to what's going to happen. What's going to be the practical step you're going to take to deal with the situation? Before you speak, I think we have business. Samuel Kwame Bedu is also a level 300 BCom accounting student and president of the Association of Business Students at the university. Samuel, if you're there, could you just give us a wave? Okay, we don't have Samuel. So, Mr. Treasurer, help us understand, practicalize it for us. If you are to really manage the financing of the economy, how, in your practical term, are you going to deal with the debt crisis, bringing on board the private sector and the public as well?
So, is it with respect to the tax bit?
Yeah, the tax bit, because I think you love taxes. So let's go with the tax bit.
What you can do is to ensure strict compliance.
Strict compliance.
Strict compliance, strict registration of businesses. There are many businesses out there who are not registered. Many businesses are not registered, making huge profits, evading taxes in many ways. So what we could do is to ensure strict compliance. Now the government has rolled out as converting the Ghana card number as 10.
Exactly.
Yeah, just to broaden the tax net. All those things, I believe, will help increase the tax revenue to a large extent. And Ghana, looking at our economic structure, or the structure of our economy, we depend mainly on taxes. Aside the taxes, that's where we go in for that. Our revenue component has taxes as a major, what do we call it? Major source. So I believe increasing the tax base, sensitization of the people, educating them on the need to pay taxes, and that most developed countries run on taxes.
Then that's where E-Levy comes in. And that's where everyone gets the controversy.
If you look at around 1995, VAT was rebutted. With people on the streets to reject the VAT.
Okay.
But with time, sensitization and everything, they all came to the realization and also to the admittance that the VAT is important on consumption of goods and services. The taxes needs to be collected and all. So we need
but as students in finance, I believe you know that you can't tax your way out of everything, right?
Yes.
Right, you can't tax your way out of everything. So we're going to be also having the debate around that, because I guess most of the viewers watching could not really agree with it. But it's a very sound argument, though, Mr. Treasurer. Grateful for that. Let's now go all the way to Cape Coast, the central region, as we're joined by students there from the University of Cape Coast. University of Cape Coast, we're grateful that you could join us. Nathaniel Kwapon, he has a master's, he's pursuing a master's of commerce, actually, at the business school of the University of Cape Coast. Nathaniel, you're listening to these arguments. You're listening to calls for interest rates to be reduced. You're listening to calls for the tax nets to be broadened, for government to be disciplined in expenditure. As you sit wherever you are listening to this debate, and as you look at your notes and take notes of what exactly is happening with Ghana's economy, what's running through your mind when it comes to what we are doing wrongly? Kindly unmute so we can hear your arguments proper. I'm afraid we would have to reconnect. We're having issues with your line there. But let's bring in any students from the University of Professional Studies, because I'm quite curious to find out from you, gentlemen, when it comes to taxation, when it comes to managing our debt crisis, there is always an argument of how relatable the policies are to the average Ghanaian on the ground. Do you think that the current administration is really living to its word when it comes to relatability?
All right, I think, right. I come from the University of Ghana, and I think that I want to come in with an intervention.
All right.
I think my colleagues from the University of Ghana also made a position, but on this particular note, I don't think that we will share a synonymous position.
Oh, so you don't agree? You don't agree with your colleagues in the studio?
No. Definitely. I feel that, well, if we are talking about a tax system, what we should be interested in is how to manage the tax process, how you're able to ensure compliance, how you're able to ensure accountability, how you don't blame the people for not paying taxes. You blame yourself for not setting up a systemic process or a systemic system that is able to compel people to pay taxes. So, I mean, for example, in our dispensation, we have the informal sector, we have the formal sector, and we know for a fact that in most cases, informal sector, we have a lot of people not paying taxes because there's no structure or system that compels them to do so. If there is a structure that compels them to do so, why not? We keep on, registering people, national identification card, driver's license, Ghana card, but we do not ensure that we have integration of these ID cards. And so you will see TIN as a prerequisite to get, Ghana card, or as a prerequisite to register for a business. But where you need someone to register for a particular business or any enterprise, we still request. For example, we have this same registration exercise where we understand that someone who may have actually maybe registered for Ghana card, who already has it integrated, should not even worry himself to go and form a queue before he gets the same registration exercise being completed. So I feel that we have lost that touch of collating a database that actually compels people, that actually dictates to the people how disciplined they should be in paying taxes. Because if you...
All right, I think we've lost him there. But of course, Valley University, Bismarck Owusu Setra Edu, a PhD candidate, if you're listening in, I guess you were in quite a pensive mood when you're listening to the argument from your colleague from the University of Ghana. It just sounds an argument to say that even as we're trying to expand the tax net, the systems in place to ensure that there is equity, there is accountability isn't there.
All right, thank you very much. I would come from a different angle on the taxation system. I think that, as we all know, our informal sector is the biggest when it comes to our, comparing with the formal sector. Now, I think that what we should be doing is what we call the modified tax system.
The modified tax system, all right.
Yes, whereby you set, like, let's say, a flat tax regime or a flat tax rate to cover everyone in the informal sector. Now, when that happens, what that means is that then you can get a lot of people from the micro and small businesses, and then you tax them. So it doesn't matter the work you are doing, there's a flat rate that you have to pay. And this, I think that if, the finance minister would institute that, we have a flat rate that everybody who is an informal sector person is captured in there, and then the person, we get our tax. When we do that, we can broaden the tax net. As we speak now, we have just about 2.4 million Ghanaians who are paying tax. Of course, we have about 54,000 plus, corporations or institutions that pay tax. But once we're able to institute a flat tax rate, regime under the modified tax system, then we can go a long way to capture a lot of the informal sectors into the tax net. I can see.
Nathaniel, joining us from the Central Region, from the University of Cape Coast. We've been having this debate about taxation, but don't you think there are other avenues of revenue generation other than, situating ourselves around taxation?
Right, Charles, I agree with you. As a matter of fact, I think the first thing we would have to do is to just reduce expenditures. At the wake of COVID, and especially at the peak of the pandemic, the president promises to build 111 hospitals. you ask yourself, how do we fund these hospitals? Okay, so in these instances, you should agree that when our expenditures actually outweigh what we are raking in, we'll be forced to borrow to support them. So the first thing we should do is, first of all, to reduce our expenditures. Then again, we can now look at enhancing tax compliance and also enhancing our mobilization strategies, because there are a lot of us who would not even pay some taxes. So for instance, Charles, if I may ask you, when was the last time you thought of a gift tax?
I'll just have to laugh to that.
So these things are all available, but we are not looking at those things. Our main efforts have been on the formal sector, taxing people in the mainstream economy. Okay, so I think basically we would have to reduce our expenditures, because if we are to do that, there's going to be some breathing space for government to look at other things. Then again, to probably with our data system, Africa, as a matter of fact, has problems with data. And so if you are to even assess the economy, especially from the creditors' point of view, there will be the confusion between Bloomberg and government about inconsistencies in data. Okay, so I believe it's a high time we try as much as possible to churn out good data, which can also help in planning. Because when our data is inconsistent, it means that most of our plans will be faulty. And I think this is also going to affect our mobilization strategy. So I think basically we would have to first of all reduce our expenditures and then look at how to enhance our revenue mobilization strategies.
You're still watching The Marketplace. This is a special edition where we are bringing in the views of students around the universities in Ghana to have a debate on how best to deal with Ghana's debt crisis. We have had the University of Ghana, the treasurer in the studio here, talk to us about the need to broaden the tax net. We've heard from the University of Professional Studies. They're also calling for accountability in expenditure and also capping in expenditure. And of course, we just heard Nathaniel from the University of Cape Coast, talk about the need for data when it comes to the processing and assimilation of, Ghana's economic ideals and our performance on the international scale. We're going to be having more of these debates shortly after this break. To stay with us. And this is a special edition of The Marketplace with me, Charles Aite. We're going a full hour. And in the past 30 minutes, we've been having colleagues from the various universities share with us their take on how best to deal with Ghana's debt crisis. And quite interesting debate, I must say. But of course, let's now delve into the international market, because we've had ratings agencies downgrade Ghana's outlook. And with Fitch and Moody's, for example, raising grave concerns about Ghana's capacity to pay back debt in that particular nature, calling it junk in some instances. President Akufo-Addo has, in a statement to the African Union, raised concern about the impact on the African continent when it comes to, the continent's extended, debt initiatives on the international market. But then take a listen to Joe Jackson, a financial analyst who's been responding to criticism against these ratings agencies, who are also calling for some discipline in Ghana's fiscal environment.
If you're B minus with negative, it means you are B minus and we're likely to downgrade you. So in terms of the real impact, I think that has happened already. The issue really is this: we should stop shooting the messenger and listen to the message. And the message is loud and clear. The international committee, the international public, those who buy, investor community, and the independent communities are not happy with how we are, the state of our public purse at the moment. They see a lot of borrowing. They see essentially we don't have enough revenue and we are spending too much. Let's fix it. Let's fix it. Lambasting the messenger doesn't solve the problem. Fixing your problems is what is important. And unfortunately, African countries don't have a good history of fixing their problems. And that's why there's even all this discussion about going to the IMF and the conditionalities involved. If we are sure that our economy is strong, let's fix it. This is not the time for partisan blame game, the blame game, who is mismanaging the economy. The truth of the matter is that our economy is in bad shape. We are broke. And the rating agencies have recognized that. Let's fix it.
Our economy is in a bad shape. We are broke, and the ratings agencies recognize that. Let me bring in Samuel Bedu from, the University of Cape Coast. Samuel, if you could hear me. I mean, these are the strong points that Joe Jackson has raised as a financial analyst. Do you agree to him from a student's perspective? Kindly unmute so we could hear you better, Samuel.
Yeah, hello. Charles, I can hear you clearly.
Yeah, you're welcome to the program. Well, we're discussing Ghana's debt crisis. You've listened to the discussion, and we just played you a clip from a financial analyst, Joe Jackson, who says Ghana's economy is broke. And of course, ratings agencies have acknowledged the fact that we're broke and we need to fix it. How do you respond to this, looking at what you're reading as a student at the University of Cape Coast?
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity to also share my views on how Ghana's crises are rising up. And I think that what the financial analyst said is really in line with what is currently happening in the economic sector. I believe that from between the years of 2017 and 2019, our debt GDP ratio increased by 7%. And between 2019 and 2020, the debt just increased by 14.9%. And when we look at the explanations that the government is giving, we are being told that it's as a result of COVID. That is, they are using COVID as an excuse to borrow excessively. But I believe that if we should check during the time of COVID, there was a fund that was being raised to help cater for expenses during the COVID situation. So if we are saying that between the between the years of 2019 and 2020, just within a space of some few months of COVID, our debt over GDP is increasing to 14.9%. And between 2017 to 2019, that is roughly 2 years, the debt per GDP increased by 7%. And I think that we would have to get an audit team to audit the COVID-19 expenditure so that we get to know we get to know the actual use of the COVID-19 fund. Do you get my point?
Yeah, I do.
And also, in certain countries, in certain countries, during this period where there was COVID, what happened is that the IMF called for such an audit, or the IMF has called for such an audit in the country which has not yet been adhered to. So we believe that if we are saying that, if the financial analyst is saying that the country is in a state where we term as the country is broke, then I believe that I'm going to side with him, because as it stands now, our debt is really increasing. And if we should check the threshold for debt sustainability internationally, which is 60%, Ghana's threshold has been broken. That is, we've breached that threshold, and our current debt percentage has really moved to about 77.6% as of September 2021.
Indeed. Morris meant you are with the Valley View University. If you could also join us with your thoughts on the kind of picture that we as a country must deconstruct when it comes to our international lenders. How can we deconstruct the message for them to now understand the fact that, yes, we're wrong and we're having issues, but we're fixing it as we speak?
Okay.
I would start by looking at the
I'm afraid we've lost Morris there. But gentlemen, Studio University of Ghana, you've heard, from your other colleagues. But how do we send the right message there to international lenders? Now that, of course, it's quite obvious that we're having issues with our debt, how do we deconstruct and get back and make sure that we attract investors this time around? I want to start off with you.
All right. I think it is not just about words. Words wouldn't be enough to convince them that, yes, we are indeed working or we are doing this and that. We should show working, all right? That's what people would say. Yes. So we can do that through, it has been recorded that about 12 billion is not being, accounted for.
You and this 12 billion.
Yeah, I'm really concerned. The rate of corruption, it's all part of these things. That is why we have so much debt. This amount would have serviced some part of the debt.
Yes.
All right? And if we're able to get more of the informal sector, as he said, collection of data, all right, we're able to get more the data of this informal sector, I believe we'll be able to know the amount we are going to charge as tax to any of them, probably after categorizing them, right? And we'll be able to get some, we'll be able to convince them that, yes, indeed, this is what we are doing, and you should probably check the credit rating you have given to us and probably improve it.
So we have to clean the mess in our homes
exactly.
to attract a good message out there. What about you? How do we clean the mess? He's told us we need to clean the mess back home, but how do we do that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Charles. Yes, thank you. So Fitch in June 2021 rated Ghana as a B when it comes to credit worthiness. But in January 2022, just this year, we've moved to a B minus. We are being frank with ourselves. Our indicators, our economic indicators, they are not the best of indicators. And I believe as a nation, we should all agree and restructure our dealings, our things, just to make sure we get on track. I believe if our indicators start looking positive, the international markets and the global world would also recognize. The IMF stated that Ghana's economic outlook looks positive, but uncertainties hang on. Uncertainties clearly in every macroeconomic structure will linger on. But as a nation, I believe we should just get our internal processes right, our domestic processes right, do well with anything to do with our international transactions or exports or anything. I believe the message would be clear, and these rating agencies would come back to rate Ghana favorably.
Indeed. Really. And, aside the rating agencies, there's been this debate about going to the IMF for some sort of an assistance program. We've heard governments object to that point of view, saying that they could deal with their issues internally and there's no need for us to go to the World Bank. The World Bank director has also stated the fact that we do not really need a bailout in this particular sense. But let's listen to Dr. William Sepura of the Value of University. He is the head of finance, sharing his thoughts on the IMF and Ghana's economic future. Take a listen to that, after which we could bring back the debate on whether or not to go to the IMF from the student's perspective.
The three agencies on Ghana government assessment, none of them talked about reduction in expenditure. All of them focus on revenue generation. Because they know that as a country and our party, we may say we will reduce our expenditure, but where we have come from, we know that this is not very realistic. So if the analysts are predicting, they will be focusing on which angle is permissible and can be done. So that angle is on the revenue generation, and the path is very clear. Government is making a lot of effort and noise also on the E-Levy. We've heard of the changes that they are expected to bring, maybe very soon. So these are the signs. So if government makes the argument, it doesn't mean that Moody's must just pick what government is saying and go by it. So it's in the hands of government to show by works and not by rhetoric or by just saying that we are going to reduce our expenditure by 20%. Government must make sure that they listen to what these agencies are saying, and it gives government to focus on what strategies can we put in place to be able to address the challenges that they have mentioned. And it's when you read the report, it's very clear. They talked about inflexibility in our revenue patterns. So government must make sure that we increase our revenues.
Right, gentlemen, so that's Dr. Williams there. But let's also take a listen to the World Bank's director, Mr. Laporte, who's stated the fact that when it comes to the debate on whether or not to go for an IMF program, Ghana must decide, but he thinks it's not much of an urgency. Take a look. Well, we shall, find that clip and play as we, move along with this discussion. But gentlemen joining us virtually, I would want to get the thoughts from the University of Cape Coast when it comes to ratings agencies and, the back and forth that government is really, making when it comes to accepting or rejecting the very words of these ratings agencies. I want to understand when it comes to ratings agencies and the kind of remarks they make regarding African economists, is it really practical, and should government really take a close look at the kind of recommendations that they're given, or should we trust our own data and move along our own lines?
So, Charles, I think your line dropped, so I couldn't hear the question properly.
Great. Of course, we're having issues with government not agreeing with the ratings agencies and, the kind of messaging that they've put out there when it comes to our downgrade. The question now is that should we as a country believe in our own data, as President Akufo-Addo argues, or should we accept what international ratings agencies are telling us and, deal with the situation as it is now?
Okay, Charles. Interestingly, government is behaving like a typical Ghanaian. When it favors you, you applaud it. When it doesn't, you hate against it. I do remember from the 2019 annual public debt report, government applauded these 3 rating agencies that they had all said good things about the country. Okay, and communicators would also carry it along. So in this instance, I do think that we only have to stick to the truth, that this is the situation we find ourselves in, and work our way out of it. The president has promised that indeed they can take out the economy from the mess instead of bringing out life. So we are already expecting that something like this should happen. That's what the people of Ghana are expecting. Okay, so when you go about chasing these rating agencies and debunking their views, it is rather not the best. I'm agreeing with Mr. Jojo about what he said, that indeed this is where we find ourselves. We have to work our way out rather than chastising the rating agencies, because these are the same agencies we'll be going back to in subsequent years that will be coming.
All right. So now there is a debate ongoing, especially within, Parliament and even economists and government as well, whether or not we should pass an E-Levy bill that could rake in more revenue, which isn't actually going to offset, the amount that government needs, or to seek IMF assistance as a matter of urgency. Gentlemen, I want to see by hand, those of you joining us virtually, those who agree for us to go for an IMF bailout instead of passing the E-Levy. Can you show by hand so we could see how many of you agree to that? Should we go for an IMF program or we should pass the E-Levy? Those for IMF, please show by hand. All right, I think we have... All right, so we have. All right, so majority of you agree to the fact that we should go for an IMF bailout. It means the majority of you do not agree, for us to have the E-Levy passed. I want to get your thoughts on that. Why do you think that we must go for an IMF program and just, brush the E-Levy under the carpet? Any of you could pick it up.
Okay.
All right.
It's very clear that we cannot manage our expenditure. And then I must make it clear that going to the IMF is not only for a financial package. There is also a technical support. They roll out a program for you that will help you to manage your expenditure. So on the basis of the fact that we are struggling to, as it were, manage the expenditure, we need a program that will cause us to be able to do so in order to reduce our debt crisis. So that is the more reason why I support the idea. All
right. Any other person with the debate on the need for us to go for an IMF program?
All right, Samson.
All right, let's come in studio. My colleagues at the University of Ghana. The debate to whether or not we should pass the E-Levy or we should go for an IMF. I mean, you're just two here, so just show by hand. Should we go for an IMF bailout?
Whether to IMF?
Both IMF and E-Levy?
No, IMF.
You want an IMF program. Should we go for an IMF program? We shouldn't. Why don't you think so?
I believe the IMF programs, aside coming with technical support, and others comes with a number of conditionalities. And if you look at the indicators, that will determine the conditionalities, which may be harsh on the economy as a nation. So if there are internal processes or ways that we can solve our own economic issues or our economic crisis, but then the pressure or the suffering to the Ghanaian people would be moderate or minimal, I believe going forward, sensitization and all of us coming to an agreement and consensus that, see, as a nation, we are not in the right standing. We should all agree and help alleviate our issues. I believe with that understanding and all, we'd be good to go.
You want us to go for an IMF program. In 30 seconds, why should we?
You know, we are finding it difficult to reduce our expenditure.
Okay.
We are finding it difficult also to increase our revenue. So what is the way out then? I think we have to go to them. They give us some programs, aside the financial support they are going to give us. Though it may be kind of difficult in implementing all these things, I believe it's a way that they have seen it from their perspective that would help us.
Okay.
So I think we should go for the IMF.
We should go. So it's a tie here, 50-50. But gentlemen, we're grateful that you could help us with your arguments and your submissions on how best we could deal with Ghana's debt crisis. Colleagues from the University of Cape Coast, from the University of Professional Studies, from that of the Valley View University on the screens. We're grateful for your thoughts and your submissions as well. We could have this discussion on and on and on, but of course the main one is going to be happening on Thursday. So please stay tuned for that. My name is Charles Aite. It's been a pleasure bringing you this special edition of The Marketplace, where we place the focus on students in Ghana. Many thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of our programs.